Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Ask About Tech, and this week we'll be talking about some of the most talked about stories in tech. We'll chat about Riot's $30 million for cybersecurity, Google's voluntary exits, and how Intel secured $2.2 billion in federal grants to boost their US chip production. And also, we couldn't skip Apple's record breaking earnings despite a slowdown in iPhone sales. There's plenty to unpack. I'm your host, Juwan. Let's get started. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg recently complained about leaks at his company, and then that gets leaked. According to this report, Mark Zuckerberg was humiliated on Thursday after he complained to Meta's entire staff that his internal remarks kept getting leaked. He said, and I quote, "We try to be really open, and then everything I say leaks." The 40-year-old billionaire told more than 70,000 employees in an all-hands meeting, according to The Verge. But within a few hours, Zuckerberg's remarks at the staff meeting were also leaked to the press. Meta's chief information security officer, Guy Rosen, sent a company-wide email warning employees there would be repercussions for anyone who was caught speaking to the media. He says, "We take leaks seriously and will take action. When information is stolen or leaked, there are repercussions beyond immediate security impact." Rosen continued, "Our teams become demoralized and we all waste time that is better spent working on products and towards our goals and mission." And then this is the craziest part. He warns that they could take action, including termination against anyone who was caught leaking, and then claims that several staffers have already been fired for doing so. So yeah, leaks are definitely an interesting and challenging topic for a lot of companies to deal with because when you work at such a huge company that employs tens of thousands of people like that, information ebbs and flows, and in a group of 70,000, you'll be willing to find a couple hundred people who just don't care and will share that information. So I don't really think that they're able to stop this, but it'll be interesting to see if the threats from the security lead has any impact. The things that they're worried about, like strategy stuff about like their VR, AI, concern about competition, all of the kind of stuff that companies want to keep very close to their chest keeps getting leaked to the press. And I think this is a concern that most companies have, right? They want to be able to like do things in a very secretive fashion, launch their products, and surprise the market. But again, as I mentioned, you always have leaks. I think that's the reason why even the US government has things like, the security clearance and things of that nature, to ensure that, information is kept secret. That's also why you have classification categories, just to ensure that, you're only limiting, especially like very sensitive information to the people who need to know about it. So that's very interesting. In essentially another round of layoffs, Google is offering a voluntary exit program for its US employees. These voluntary severance packages are being offered to employees in their platform and devices division. This, and what makes this even interesting is that Google just had a couple of layoffs across many different departments. So it's surprising but not shocking to see them, doing what feels or what is essentially another round of layoffs. And I guess the broader question is like, what does this mean for Google in the general terms? We've seen more and more companies, despite rising profits, continue to do more and more layoffs. In some cases, moving operations offshore to save costs, or pivoting to AI strategies, or sometimes even just rehiring people in a different department. So it definitely remains to be seen what all of this means or what this leads up to. And my thoughts are definitely with the people who are losing their jobs in this really, really tough job market. It's currently an employer's market. There's so much talent out there jostling for so little positions. You're seeing now up to like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, applications on job postings, and that's really, really tough. So, shout out to those Google employees. I hope that they're able to bounce back on their feet pretty quickly. But a creator recently said that there might be a different spin to it, and I'm going to roll the tape just so you can hear our perspective.
Have you noticed how the biggest moves in tech often happen in plain sight, yet somehow fly under the radar? Let me tell you about a chess game we're seeing right now play out at Google, one where most people aren't even seeing the real game. See, Google just announced voluntary buyouts for their platform and devices unit, the team behind Android, Chrome, Pixel phones, and Nest devices. On the surface, it's a familiar story, right? Big tech company, restructuring, pivoting to AI, business as usual. But there's something far more interesting happening here. Now, here's where this gets so spicy. These aren't just random products. They're the exact same pieces that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, has been eyeing in their massive antitrust case against Google. See, the DOJ isn't just concerned about search dominance, they're looking at how Google bundles everything together to maintain its monopoly. I spoke about this on Fox Business a couple of weeks ago, where I talked about how forcing them to offload Chrome wasn't going to be smart. So when Google offers buyouts for a specific division, talking about efficiency and AI investment, they're playing chess, guys, not checkers. They're potentially preparing for a future where they might be forced to break up parts of their business. And they wrapped it in the perfect PR narrative. Who's going to argue with investing in AI? That's what every company is doing, right? Right?
That's definitely a very interesting perspective, and I can't wait to see all of this shake out. Before we pivot to the next topic, I don't usually wear a lot of hats, but I got this hat, at a tech conference, Render ATL, shout out Render, last year. And, I saw it in my closet today and decided to throw it on. I think it's cool, but if you think it's not, roast me in the comments, but go easy on me. Now, on to the next one. French startup Riot raised $30 million to expand its employee-focused cybersecurity solution. According to this report in TechCrunch, the French startup raised their $30 million Series B after reaching $10 million in annual revenue in 2024. Originally, they were focused on educating employees about cybersecurity risks, but the company now says they want to go one step further and nudge employees to minimize their attack surface. So the company originally started, with fake phishing campaigns. Employees regularly receive emails that look like real emails, but they're designed to trick people into clicking on the links and entering their personal information. This way, employees learn that they should be more suspicious about incoming emails. And over time, the company added other educational content with a friendly security chatbot called Halbert. And then now it can be accessed through Slack and Microsoft Teams. The company is definitely having a lot of success in these different spaces that they're playing. And I've seen, similar AI-powered tools that monitor employee behavior and flag potential risks before breaches occur. I think that's definitely one major aspect of cybersecurity. You have to think about different type of risk, operational systems, and things like that. But I think they're focused more on the employee side, which is interesting. What you're seeing is that this is a bigger signal for the industry as different aspects of cybersecurity, this part being more focused on people, take root, and more things happening in those different spaces as more companies look to show up their people, systems, technology, and similar stuff. I think cybersecurity is going to be a growing field, especially with AI. Risk compliance is going to be many more of those plays. And companies like Riot are going to take full advantage of that. And if you're someone who's looking to break into tech or you're already in tech and you're thinking about your next move, I definitely think that the cybersecurity space is one that's going to keep growing. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that space. Apple just announced their best ever earnings despite the iPhone revenue dip. Check out this report that breaks down how much they made and exactly how they made it.
Tech giants first quarter results just now hitting the wires, and let's get you those numbers. EPS first quarter 240, that's versus expectations of 235. Revenue 124.3 billion versus expectations of 124.1 billion. So beats there on the bottom and the top for Apple. Revenue did jump about 4%. Gross margins do hang in there, 46.9%. The street was closer to 46.56. If you go through the segments here, Julie, iPhone clocks in 69.14 billion. Now the street was closer to 71.04 billion. Services 26.34 billion. That's versus expectations of 26.1 billion. iPad is a beat at 8.09 billion. Mac is a beat at 8.99 billion. Wearables, home and accessories, that is a bit light, 11.75. The street was closer to 11.95 billion. Finally, Greater China clocks in at 18.51 billion. I did have the chance to speak with CFO Kevin Parwick about these numbers. He did point out to me the install base of active devices has reached a new all-time high across all products and geographic segments. About the iPhone number, I did ask him, obviously, did he come in lighter than what the street was looking for? Were there puts and takes that maybe the street and analysts had missed there? He pointed out, listen, iPhone results roughly flat. We saw where we rolled out Apple Intelligence, he told me, it was better than where they had not yet rolled Apple Intelligence.
So that's definitely very interesting to see those numbers. Majority of Apple's growth is happening in services, the App Store, iCloud, Apple Music, and of course, wearables. But the biggest ticket item for Apple over the past decade and a half, the last 15 years, has been the iPhone. But lately, it's just not been performing as a hot commodity that it used to be. And where you've seen a lot of that slowing down is especially in China. Now, outside of the US, China is one of America's largest, if not the largest market that exists out there. And in recent times, you've had competitors like Huawei, Xiaomi, offering more affordable but advanced 5G enabled devices. So that competition is really taking Apple's share of the market in China, and that's a big concern. Even before the launch of the latest iPhone, even before this report came out, they already knew that they were not going to be doing well in China, and that carried through this report. But I think even in other parts of the world, the iPhone is still doing great, but it's not growing as expected. And I think it's because there's not being so much innovation in the iPhone space. It's basically, if you ask most people, they'll tell you that it's been the same phone over the last 3 releases. So a lot of people are just holding on to their phones much longer. The Apple Intelligence was one thing that was supposed to get a lot of people excited, but that's still rolling out slowly. It's not out in Europe. It's not out in China. There's still like a lot of regulators in that space checking it out, trying to figure out what's going on with it before they finally allow it to go in the market. But even then, when it gets released, I'm not sure that that's going to be like a big value mover. And why I say that is because the intelligence experience is not native to Apple. If you think about where people are most excited about, using AI, it's things like ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek R1 recently that we covered in the last video. If you didn't watch it, go check it out. So you're seeing a lot of this different trends driving and carrying, the AI space. I don't think that it's something that people are thinking about, buying an iPhone and necessarily crazy about it just because of the intelligence. I do think it's going to improve the product, but I don't think that that's the main reason why people are going out to get it. So it definitely remains to be seen if this is going to be like the big changer for Apple. But I definitely think this space is interesting to watch, to say the least. Another thing, for example, that was supposed to be like the ushering the next generation for Apple was the Vision Pro. I remember how excited people were when that launched, I think about 2 years ago now, but it just doesn't get that talked about. I don't think the adoption has been, as much as people initially thought it would be. So it's interesting to see like what direction Apple looks to for growth beyond, the App Store, iCloud, and those other spaces. I think it's going to be an interesting next couple of months, next couple of years for Apple. But, at this numbers are showing, they're still making a crap ton of money. So in the short to medium term, I think Apple is going to be fine regardless. And in the last but not the least story of the day, Intel has received $2.2 billion in federal grants for US chip production. The semiconductor space has been one of the hottest. In the very first episode of Ask About Tech, we talked about, the $500 billion Stargate project. And I think that the semiconductor space and the chip space is definitely one that's going to be leading the tech industry over the next decade, over the next 10 years. And this is another indicator in that space. So semiconductor giant Intel Corporation has received $2.2 billion from the US Department of Commerce through the US Chips and Science Act, the company shared during its Thursday earnings call. The interim CEO, Dave Zinsser, and executive vice president and CFO, said that the Silicon Valley-based company received the first tranche of $1.1 billion in the federal grants at the end of 2024, and they received the additional $1.1 billion in January 2025. These grants are based on reaching certain milestones. The company was awarded a total of $7.8 billion, which is less than the original $8.5 billion that was initially estimated, but that's still a lot of money. And you already have a lot of players in that space, from NVIDIA to AMD. I think Microsoft Azure is also playing in that space. So this will definitely help out Intel in this competition, or in this chips race, if you like, to build the data infrastructure that's going to power AI and the adoption of AI and all the different use cases that we're going to be seeing for AI. So definitely very exciting. But I think the bigger question is, will all of these different investments, grants from the government, partnerships between all these different companies, is this going to help America be competitive in this semiconductor market? For people who may not be familiar, the big companies in Taiwan like TSMC have been the leaders in this semiconductor space. But with the growing concerns and fractious relationship between the US and China, the US has been putting more attention in more local production of these chips and these devices, these data platforms, these data warehouses, to ensure that the US can stay competitive in this overall space, especially with AI taking off. But if it's anything to go by, the same way DeepSeek was able to compete with very little and almost be at par with ChatGPT, are we going to see something similar, despite the US pouring a lot of money into this space to try to best China? It remains to be seen, but I definitely want to know what you think in the comments. So if you think the US is going to win, let me know, and let me know why in the comments. But if you think, China always has a way of making this big comeback. You see with the cars, Tesla is making electric vehicles, but the electric vehicles that China is making has just way more features, is way cooler in many cases. You've seen BYD. So do you think that's going to be the same case in AI, or do you think the US got it? And also what it means for everyday techies like you and I shared this thread earlier today, and it's gotten over 40 interaction on threads about the kind of jobs that are going to be created due to all of this investment in Stargate. You can have data scientists, ML engineers, AI architects, AI trainers, AI safety engineers, but also you're going to see a lot on the infrastructure side, right? If this is a space that you're interested in, do a lot more research, figure out what roles are popping up in these spaces, and figure out a way that you can get a slice of that pie. We're seeing a lot of layoffs, we're seeing a lot of challenges in the market, but I think with challenges oftentimes also always comes opportunity. So figure out a way that you can find your own opportunity even in the midst of all this chaos. Figure out a way that you can still win even when it feels like everything is going to crap. That's the show for today. I look forward to seeing you in next week's installment of Ask About Tech, where we'll be breaking down even a lot more interesting tech stories. Peace.